On the outskirts of rural Pennsylvania stands a ruin most locals refuse to approach. Its broken windows stare out like hollow eyes, its brick walls cracked and strangled by ivy. Some still call it by its name, St. Margaret's Psychiatric Hospital. Others call it simply the Whispering Walls. For decades, the asylum was whispered about in hushed voices, strange experiments, missing patients, cries that carried on the wind. Officially, it was closed in 1979 after a fire gutted part of the East Wing. But the truth, buried in old police reports and forgotten news clippings, is much darker. What follows is the story of that place and of those who stepped inside and never returned. St. Margaret's was built in 1911 during America's asylum boom. Hundreds of psychiatric hospitals rose across the country, designed less as sanctuaries and more as warehouses for the unwanted. With its red brick Gothic design and iron-barred windows, St. Margaret's loomed like a cathedral of despair. It quickly filled with patients, the mentally ill, the violent, the unwanted. Reports suggest it held over 1,200 people at its peak, far beyond its intended capacity of 400. Conditions deteriorated, staff were overwhelmed, funding dwindled. By the 1940s, whispers circulated of experimental treatments carried out in the basement wards, insulin shock therapy, lobotomies, sensory deprivation. Patients screamed at night, but the thick walls kept the noise from reaching the outside world. At least, most of the time. In 1956, a patient named Daniel Whitmore vanished. His record showed he had been transferred to another facility, yet no hospital claimed him. When his sister demanded answers, she was told she must have been mistaken. Daniel never existed. But his name remained on the admission log. His signature, shaky and desperate, still scrawled across the intake papers. Over the next decade, 22 patients went missing without explanation. The asylum's administration insisted they had escaped or been released, yet no police reports were filed, no family members contacted. Locals began to whisper that the patients hadn't left the asylum at all, that something inside its walls had consumed them. In March of 1979, a fire broke out in the East Wing. Official reports blamed faulty wiring, but firefighters described something stranger. Smoke that seemed to move against the wind, flames that crawled along the walls like living things. When the blaze was extinguished, 3 patients were found dead, but over 40 others were unaccounted for. Their beds were empty, their personal belongings untouched. It was as if they had simply walked into the smoke and never come back. That night, St. Margaret's closed for good. The remaining patients were transferred, the staff scattered, the building was left to rot. But it did not stay silent. By the 1990s, the asylum had become a magnet for thrill seekers. Teenagers dared each other to step inside. Paranormal investigators set up cameras and microphones. They all reported the same things. Whispers echoing down the halls, though no one else was present. Footsteps in the locked wards, cold spots where breath misted in the air, even in summer. And sometimes the sound of screaming, faint and distant, as though trapped behind the walls themselves. One urban explorer described entering the old hydrotherapy ward, where patients had once been strapped into bathtubs of ice water. He swore he saw a figure standing at the far end of the room, shrouded in shadow. When he shone his flashlight, the figure was gone, but the water in the tubs began to ripple, as if disturbed by unseen hands. He left and never returned. In 2008, a small crew of filmmakers traveled to St. Margaret's to shoot a low-budget documentary on America's forgotten asylums. They interviewed locals, recorded the graffiti-stained walls, and set up cameras for an overnight stay. What happened next is pieced together from fragments of recovered footage.
The team laughed and joked at first, filming themselves in the crumbling hallways. But as night fell, things changed. One camera captured the sound of a woman crying, faint but unmistakable. The crew followed the noise into the basement, where the old padded cells remained. The footage becomes chaotic. Heavy breathing, flashlight beams swinging wildly, one of the crew screaming, "Don't go in there!" Then, static. The next morning, locals found the crew's van still parked outside the asylum. Inside were all their wallets, cameras, and phones. The team was gone. To this day, they have never been found. In recent years, the asylum has drawn the attention of paranormal researchers. Some claim the building itself is alive, feeding on those who enter. Others suggest that decades of suffering imprinted themselves into the walls, a psychic scar that replays endlessly. Visitors describe a phenomenon locals now call the whispering walls. If you stand in the central hallway at midnight, they say you will hear voices, not random noise, but your own name, whispered again and again. Some who hear it claim they felt compelled to walk deeper into the building, as if guided by invisible hands. Few who experienced this have been willing to speak publicly. One survivor, a man named Greg Holloway, posted anonymously online. "I heard them. They said my name. I felt them pulling me, dragging me toward the basement. I don't know how I broke free, but I ran. I never looked back. I still dream of it. I still hear them." In 2021, during the pandemic, a group of college students filmed a live stream inside St. Margaret's. For the first hour, it was nothing but nervous laughter and bad jokes. Then the chat began to flood with messages. "Who's that behind you?" The streamers claimed no one else was there, but frame by frame, viewers could see them, pale shapes, barely visible in the shadows of the hall. The students never left the asylum. Police later found their equipment stacked neatly at the entrance, cameras still recording. The footage shows only static and, faintly, the sound of whispering. Today, St. Margaret's Psychiatric Hospital still stands. Locals avoid it. Developers refuse to buy the land. Even vandals rarely enter anymore. If you ever find yourself near its gates, you might feel it. The chill in the air, the weight of silence pressing down. Some say you can even hear the whispers carried on the wind. And if you're foolish enough to answer, you may find that the walls remember your name, too.